Hi everyone, and welcome to the tutorial series for the procedural park. In this video we're going to be taking a look at how to add a wind actor and some birds. And the coverage is going to be as simple as how to spawn the wind actor and play around with its settings, and how to spawn the birds on top of the park. So if we go back to Unreal, we'll see that we're once again in our level tutorial here. And these two right here, wind actor and spawn birds, are perhaps the most optional things that I've added. These are usually nice to haves and may not necessarily be applicable to you. So what is a wind actor? You can actually grab a separate actor right here. If you click here and you search for wind, you can see that we have a wind directional source. And a wind actor is basically a wind directional sources. If I hover my mouse over, it says that it provides directional wind, but it only affects speed tree assets, right? So if you're using speed tree, which I know is quite common for users of Unreal, if you have one of those licenses and you import your speed tree assets, they will automatically, is my understanding, receive wind from one of these actors. If you don't have speed tree assets, then this is not going to make a difference. So to demonstrate this, what I've done is I've come here to the foliage section, and you know that we have two. We have a pine, and I've made this percent chance 0, and I've used the hill tree asset, percent chance to spawn 1. The hill tree asset is actually a speed tree asset. So if I go ahead and click on spawn foliage, we're gonna come right here. You see that we have a bunch of trees, right, spawned. Nothing is happening, there's no wind, right? So what I would do now is I will go ahead and press spawn wind actor, and notice that as soon as I do that, the trees start moving. There you go. And what I've done, if you click on the park here, is you notice at the bottom here I have a wind directional source 1, and you can actually click here and you'll see that we have a bunch of different settings. The most important ones are the strength and the speed. So you could, in-game, target this directional source if you wanted to, and change the strength and the speed. So you could simply change the strength. So let's say, for example, from 0.1, let's make this like a 0.5. And notice that now the trees are moving a little bit faster. Like a 0.8, and now let's change the speed from a 0.1 to something like 0.5, and now it looks more like a little storm that's hitting, right? So play around with those values. This probably looks a little too much, but you can change. Let's see, speed 1 is probably, yeah, way too much. So you can change the values of these two variables, speed and strength, and that would affect the wind. You can also change the direction, right? So if I have the actor selected here, notice that if I zoom in, I'm gonna move him up a little bit. Notice that we have a little icon here with an arrow. So what I can do is I can actually rotate this actor, and based on the direction of the actor, you'll see that the wind is going to change. So you do have control. Notice that the arrow's there. If I go and put the arrow this way, notice that now the trees change. So you do have a fairly good control over how you want to affect the wind in your scene. However, like I said, this only affects speed tree assets. So for the kite demo, it's obvious that Epic used speed tree to create the hill tree, the hill tree, and I believe there was another type of tree, and it's also affected by the wind actor. However, if you spawn something else, let's just go ahead and remove everything. If you spawn the pine tree, I'm gonna disable hill tree and put the pine tree, and we go ahead and spawn the pine tree. Notice that the pine tree seems to be moving a little bit. And this movement is actually already from the shader. So what I've done is I've included some special movement here on this asset. This doesn't come in the original Epic asset, but I've added it to the material. And this is different because it's not using a wind actor. Notice that we don't have a wind actor, but the trees are moving. Same thing for the grass. If you look at the grass, it looks like it's moving here. However, there's no wind actor. So if you wanted to add wind, for example, or change the wind settings for the pine trees, you can actually come to the material here, select one of these, and go to the material for the branches, which is element 1. And if you open the instance here, there is a new section called wind. And again, I've added this here. So let me just show you. I'm going to undock this. And you can change the wind intensity here to a different value. By default, it's 0.2, but you can put it like 0.8. And notice that now that the trees are moving way more. So you do have some control, but unfortunately you can't really change it very easily in-game. And you don't have a direction value here. But I did want to mention that you do have that ability to do that. And the same thing for the grass. If we were to look for the grass, field grass, and look for the grass material instance here, you'll notice that we have a field called, let me just, WPO, which stands for World Position Offset, and you have a few values like this. For example, 04.14, World Position Offset wave speed, and by default is 0.14. This actually does come with the asset from Epic Games, so you can change this value to something else, and by changing it to 0.5, you can see that the grass is now moving a lot faster. So unfortunately, there is no unified solution here, but if you wanted to have wind, a lot of wind in your level, you can manually change the shader for the grass, and you can change the shader for the pine trees. Or if you're using the other trees, then you can use the wind actor. And that is pretty much all there is to it for the wind. And the last thing I wanted to show was the birds. And there's really nothing to it. It's just if you click on spawn bird actor, you'll see that we have some birds at the top there. And all it is I am spawning a blueprint called BP birds, and you can see I have it selected here. And these are actually particles, mesh particles of birds that are just flying around. And you have a few options here. You can have them circling, or you can disable circling here, and you can see that they're just moving in a different direction. Then you can change the spawn rate multiply. You can change the number of birds by changing the settings here. And you can go back to circle and you have way more birds here. So like 100 birds. I don't know if there's a limit here. Probably there is a hard limit, unfortunately. And the circle direction, you can change it clockwise and counterclockwise. And that's all there is to it. This is, again, super optional, but I found this really neat blueprint in one of Epic's content examples. And I figured this is really nice to add as a final touch because it's extremely performant, as these are particle effects, right? They don't have any collision. They don't have any specific behavior. It's just for the looks. So I click play here and you have your park. And if you look up, you'll see some birds flying around. Alright guys, that is all there is to it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.